Welcome, dearly beloved trailblazers. They've been watching you and now they want to understand you, perhaps even emulate you. Sounds like the setup for a psychological deep dive, right? But this isn't theory. This is unfolding reality. Elite strategists, the kind who navigate complexities that make quantum physics look straightforward, have had their focus on you. Every evolution, every innovation, every subtle shift you initiated, they absorbed it all. Prepare for a perspective shift. Some of the most impactful projections in future strategies are being modeled after individuals who operate outside the established frameworks. Yes, that includes you. You didn't strive for the limelight, you didn't seek external validation. Yet your impact is so profound that it compelled professionals wired to dissect everything, to pause, reevaluate, and acknowledge an undeniable force. While that sounds intense, let's acknowledge the irony. Individuals whose expertise lies in anticipating and mitigating uncertainty are now implicitly recognizing you as a paradigm shift. Stay engaged, because the insights you're about to glean will illuminate the magnitude of your unique presence and reveal why leading strategists are quietly adjusting their frameworks in response to your influence. Number 1, your subtle influence shapes outcomes you'll never witness. Your subtle influence shapes outcomes you'll never witness. Even as you navigated your life guided by your principles and making choices aligned with your intrinsic compass, you were indirectly influencing events on a much grander scale. Leading strategists, masters of foresight and calculated planning, meticulously documented the patterns you created organically. Each word, each hesitation, each seemingly insignificant action generated a cascading effect. Their observation was not passive. They were analyzing, adjusting, and reformulating their strategies based on your actions. The captivating aspect is that you likely believed you were simply proceeding through your daily life. Yet your presence emerged as a pivotal element in their strategic calculations. You were shaping decisions, influencing outcomes, and recalibrating strategies through the sheer force of your authentic self. It wasn't about seeking attention or leaving a mark. It was about your genuine character and your capacity to act in ways that defied conventional prediction. Your intuition, your insights, and your unwavering composure in situations that would overwhelm most individuals became a silent guide they had to integrate. Every choice you embraced, every boundary you established, and every refusal to succumb to manipulation generated consequences in arenas you may never encounter. They were compelled to reassess their approaches because your influence unlocked novel opportunities and potential challenges they hadn't anticipated. Your influence didn't require amplification. It didn't require dramatization. It didn't require acknowledgement to exert impact. They recognized it even if others remained oblivious. You impacted the unseen layers of decision-making, the intricate threads that orchestrate outcomes behind the curtain. And the most remarkable aspect is that none of this was pre-planned or intentional. It stemmed from wholeheartedly embodying yourself, making decisions rooted in your values, and refusing to compromise in the face of surrounding turbulence. That level of influence is exceptional. It's uncommon and it's unsettling for those who seek to control every element. You became an unpredictable, undeniable factor. and that drove them to observe, adapt, and ultimately respect your subtle authority in ways that will likely remain imperceptible to you. Number 2, you've evolved into a performance standard they can't disregard. You've evolved into a performance standard they can't disregard. This wasn't the result of striving to outperform others or prove a point. It emerged from your consistent approach, your concentration, your dedication, your unwillingness to compromise on core principles. Leading strategists, experts in evaluation and assessment are identifying patterns in your conduct that establish a novel benchmark. Each instance of you navigating situations with serene precision. Each instance of you making well-considered yet decisive choices establishes a comparative reference point. They begin to evaluate others, assess outcomes, and even gauge their own performance against the degree of clarity, integrity, and effectiveness you embody. You became the subtle measure against which all else is evaluated. It's not a formal designation or a promotion, it's a discrete form of authority that holds significant weight. What renders it exceptional is that you didn't solicit recognition. You weren't performing for an audience or seeking external approval. Excellence of this caliber transcends applause. It's undeniable. They can't overlook it because it contrasts sharply with the commonplace, the impulsive, and the hurried decisions that dominate most operational contexts. Your standard compels them to reevaluate their expectations, to reconsider their own methods, and even to question their preconceived notions. They are driven to acknowledge your ability to manage pressure, your capacity to remain composed amidst chaos, and the enduring effects of your decisions. Unintentionally, you've established a benchmark that will prove challenging for others to achieve. It transcends mere skill. It encompasses presence. The consistency of your actions over time conveys a message that resonates more powerfully than any spoken words. There exists a mode of operating that commands respect without demanding it. Your influence becomes inherent, shaping how decisions are formulated, how priorities are established, and how results are assessed. Individuals accustomed to exerting control are suddenly compelled to acknowledge a standard that lies beyond their direct control, and one that they must account for. This is precisely why you've evolved into a performance standard they can't afford to ignore. Every action, whether meticulously planned or instinctively executed, has transformed into a measuring stick. A subtle yet irrefutable force that influences how others perform, behave, and even conceptualize. Excellence of this nature doesn't dissipate. It endures, and it alters the operational dynamics of the environment around you, irrespective of whether others consciously recognize it. Number 3, your choices redefined their risk assessments. Your choices redefined their risk assessments. Each decision you made, whether transparent or nuanced, prompted leading strategists to reevaluate the probabilities they had been operating under for months or even years. In their realm, every aspect is meticulously calculated, every variable accounted for. Yet your presence introduced a novel factor they couldn't ignore. You weren't incorporated into their established strategy, yet your decisions and actions generated outcomes they had to anticipate. A single choice you made could alter the risk landscape in unanticipated ways, forcing them to adjust their methodology, reevaluate timelines, and reconsider the realm of possibility. It's the kind of influence that operates subtly yet alters the trajectory of everything it touches. They recognized patterns in your approach to situations that they themselves couldn't have predicted. Your instincts, your capacity to interpret individuals and circumstances, your decisiveness. These initiated a cascading effect that altered plans on a scale they hadn't prepared for. The choices you embraced transformed into benchmarks, reference points, and at times, even cautionary signals. They realized that disregarding your actions could lead to setbacks or unforeseen repercussions, and they were compelled to factor you into every subsequent calculation. It extended beyond simply what you did. It encompassed the influence your presence exerted on the entire system of planning and execution. Your influence was subtle yet undeniable. The manner in which you navigated challenges, established boundaries, and made decisions under duress compelled them to reassess their risk evaluations. What once appeared manageable became uncertain, and what once seemed unattainable became something they now had to meticulously plan for. You altered their perception of control without engaging in direct confrontation. Even minor choices you made created ripples that extended far beyond your immediate awareness. Each step you took, each boundary you reinforced, and each refusal to yield to pressure redefined their calculations. They were compelled to innovate, adapt, and acknowledge your unpredictability. Your presence transformed into a variable that couldn't be disregarded. And in doing so, you reshaped the very framework within which they operated. Your decisions didn't merely influence outcomes, they altered the fundamental rules of the game, and they had no alternative but to acknowledge it. Number 4, they're expressing gratitude because you averted potential systemic failures. They're expressing gratitude because you averted potential systemic failures. Every action you embraced, every boundary you defined, and every decision you implemented subtly prevented situations from spiraling into disarray. You weren't seeking acknowledgement or acclaim, yet your presence acted as a stabilizing influence within an environment where a single misstep could have resulted in severe consequences. Leading strategists recognized how your deliberate, measured approach preempted errors before they had an opportunity to materialize. Your capacity to anticipate outcomes, to perceive when situations were deviating from their intended course, and to intervene discreetly ensured that reputations remained intact. Resources weren't squandered, and lives that could have been impacted remained safe. What renders this extraordinary is that your influence remained imperceptible to the majority. The public, casual observers, and even many internal stakeholders would have remained unaware of how close certain situations came to escalating into crises. Yet behind the scenes, your decisions created a buffer, a safety net that maintained operational stability. Each instance of a plan remaining on track or a miscalculation being averted stemmed from your presence. At times, actively at times, simply through existing as a consistent, discerning influence that compelled others to act responsibly. They are expressing gratitude because the repercussions of your actions extended far beyond your immediate field of vision. What might have appeared to be minor choices, a suggestion, a discreet warning, a well-considered decision, prevented mistakes that could have carried significant costs. Your clarity and foresight generated outcomes that appeared effortless from an external perspective, but the reality is that your input was indispensable. You transformed into the subtle safeguard, the unsung protector whose influence preserved the integrity of the broader landscape. Within a realm where errors can quickly escalate and reputations can be destroyed instantaneously, your role was paramount. The gratitude emanating from leading strategists isn't merely a polite gesture. It's a recognition of a scarce attribute, the capacity to act with precision, foresight, and integrity in ways that prevent disaster before it even becomes apparent. Your presence, your decisions, and your unwavering composure didn't merely influence outcomes. They safeguarded everything in your vicinity. That is why they are expressing their appreciation, even if the full scope of what you averted remains undisclosed. Number 5, you exposed systemic vulnerabilities they couldn't afford to acknowledge. You exposed systemic vulnerabilities they couldn't afford to acknowledge. Simply through being present and executing your role with clarity and precision, you revealed flaws in systems that others assumed were impenetrable. Each action you embraced, each standard you upheld, illuminated areas that had been overlooked, underestimated, or disregarded. Leading strategists trained to anticipate threats and manage outcomes were compelled to confront blind spots they would have preferred to keep concealed. Your consistency and competence rendered the gaps undeniable, demonstrating where assumptions were flawed and where overconfidence had created vulnerabilities. Your influence wasn't about drawing attention to their errors or assigning blame. It stemmed from the contrast between your operational methods and those of others. By maintaining discipline, integrity, and focus, you created a mirror that reflected their weaknesses in stark clarity. They couldn't disregard it because the consequences of allowing those gaps to persist could have been catastrophic. Your presence demanded accountability, and they had no alternative but to confront it. In exposing these vulnerabilities, you didn't merely identify flaws, you spurred improvement. What might have gone unnoticed for months or years suddenly became urgent. Systems were refined, strategies were adjusted, and protocols were reinforced because your actions highlighted what had remained invisible. You became an unintentional catalyst for enhanced efficiency and security, not driven by a desire to disrupt, but by a refusal to compromise on standards. The extraordinary aspect is that this exposure didn't necessitate confrontation. You didn't need to argue, defend your position, or create a spectacle. Through simply existing and fulfilling your role with competence, you prompted reflection, action, and refinement. The gaps that could have resulted in failure were now being addressed, and the credit, or rather the acknowledgement, was theirs to extend. Yet it was your presence that initiated the change. They're expressing gratitude because through fulfilling your responsibilities and maintaining integrity, you prevented potential catastrophes and fortified the systems they relied upon. You made them realize that even the most secure operations are susceptible to vulnerabilities and that it requires someone operating at your level to illuminate them. Without you, those blind spots could have persisted undetected until it was too late. Your subtle influence reshaped their understanding of efficiency, control, and reliability. And for that, they are compelled to express their appreciation. Number 6, your calculated reserve became a strategic asset. They respected your calculated reserve. It became a strategic asset they respected. You didn't need to announce your capabilities, prove your worth, or compete for recognition. Each instance of restraint, each moment you chose thoughtful consideration over impulsive reaction conveyed a message that resonated more profoundly than any spoken words. Individuals trained to analyze situations, to anticipate every move, began to recognize patterns in your demeanor. They understood that your influence wasn't contingent upon vocal pronouncements or dramatic gestures. Instead, it emanated from control, precision, and the confidence to act or refrain from acting at the optimal moment. Every calculated pause you embraced became a reflective surface, revealing the underlying nature of those around you. When others rushed to overcompensate or inflate their perceived importance, your composed presence highlighted the distinction between mere noise and genuine capability. They began to appreciate that you didn't need to argue, justify, or pursue recognition. Your silence wasn't passive, it was deliberate. It shaped the decision-making process, the approach to conflicts, and the determination of outcomes. Individuals who anticipated immediate responses found themselves waiting, observing, and adapting to your cadence rather than imposing their own. By refraining from hasty reactions, you compelled them to reassess their strategies. They had to consider the possibility that your calm and restraint stemmed not from indecision, but from intelligence in action. Your silence transformed into a tool that altered dynamics without immediate recognition. What could have been interpreted as passivity was actually a demonstration of control, awareness, and foresight that made others uneasy as it exposed their own impulsiveness. The respect you garnered from this extended beyond fleeting admiration. It was the kind that endures because it's rooted in consistency and integrity. Individuals recognized that you didn't need to perform in order to influence outcomes, and they acknowledged the power inherent in that. Your silence shaped perception, dictated interactions, and commanded attention simply through existing as a force that couldn't be rushed or manipulated. It became a strategic asset precisely because it wasn't employed in a conventional manner. It was subtle, nuanced, and profoundly effective. Within a world saturated with noise, your silence rendered you untouchable, and for that they couldn't help but respect you. Number 7, your commitment to principle is a value they can't overestimate. Your commitment to principle is a value they can't overestimate. In a world where allegiances shift as easily as the prevailing winds, where individuals alter their affiliations for convenience, recognition, or fear, your consistency shines as a beacon. Your integrity, your refusal to compromise on what you fundamentally believe to be right, has evolved into a rare and potent force. Leading observers, individuals trained to assess risk, predict behavior, and evaluate trustworthiness, acknowledge that the commitment you demonstrate cannot be purchased, manipulated, or replicated. It's cultivated through steadfastness, through consistent action, and unwavering resolve even when the outcome remains uncertain, and through a refusal to compromise your values for short-term advantage. What distinguishes your commitment is that it's proactive, not passive. It's not about blind obedience or subservience. It's about alignment with core principles, clarity of purpose, and a rejection of chaos or temptation. You've consistently acted in ways that reflect reliability, discernment, and courage, establishing a foundation that others, regardless of their training or strategic acumen, now evaluate their own actions against. Within a domain where information is power and trust is fragile, your unwavering alignment has become one of the most valuable attributes one can possess. Your commitment to principle creates a ripple effect. It influences decisions, stabilizes outcomes, and strengthens the framework of trust that surrounds you. Individuals recognize when someone operates predictably, ethically, and with integrity, particularly in high-pressure situations where the stakes are substantial. Your presence provides reassurance, commands respect, and subtly reshapes the dynamics of every interaction. Leading strategists don't simply respect commitment, they rely on it. Your example has illustrated what genuine, unshakable commitment embodies in action. Material gains, shortcuts, or fleeting advantages pale in comparison to the significance of someone who can be trusted implicitly. They know that you are not only consistent but also principled, and that combination is something they cannot take for granted. You've evolved into living evidence that commitment is more than a virtue. It is a strategic value, and your unwavering dedication has garnered recognition that surpasses financial reward, position, or influence. They've taken note, and the respect they now hold for your commitment is as calculated and deliberate as every other aspect of their operations. Number 8, they're expressing gratitude because you enabled their success. They're expressing gratitude because you enabled their success. Your presence, your choices, and your consistent vigilance created conditions that allowed victories to occur that might otherwise have been missed. You weren't seeking acknowledgement or acclaim. Yet your foresight ensured that critical opportunities were seized at the optimal moment. Your precision guided outcomes with clarity, and your vigilance intercepted threats before they escalated into problems. Leading strategists whose responsibility is to anticipate every variable and manage every scenario acknowledge that certain triumphs would have been unattainable without your input. Your influence was the subtle force behind results that appeared effortless from the outside, but were actually the product of your consistent awareness and steadfast action. You operated in ways that distinguished you from others. While they were focused on immediate objectives, you were observing, analyzing, and making decisions that ensured the integrity of the larger strategic vision. The victories they now celebrate were frequently built upon the foundation you subtly laid, the gaps you filled, and the foresight you applied when others were inattentive. They recognized that without your steady presence, minor oversights could have cascaded into significant failures, and outcomes that seemed routine would have been placed at risk. Your role didn't require flashy displays or grand pronouncements. It required clarity, integrity, and the capacity to remain steadfast under pressure. By fulfilling these requirements, you created a framework within which success became attainable for others. They witnessed how your consistency, your capacity to anticipate consequences, and your disciplined execution directly shaped results. Your influence evolved into a critical variable in their strategies, a subtle guide steering outcomes toward favorable paths. The gratitude they express is genuine, It's an acknowledgement of a rare quality, the capacity to influence results without seeking control, to enhance outcomes without demanding recognition, and to act with foresight that only someone grounded, observant, and unwavering can provide. They know that the victories they celebrate are inextricably linked to the role you played in rendering them achievable. Your presence didn't simply support success, it facilitated it, and for that they are compelled to acknowledge and express their appreciation. Number 9, you revealed that some triumphs are secured without direct conflict. You revealed that some triumphs are secured without direct conflict. Your approach demonstrated that power and influence don't always stem from confrontation, aggression, or ostentation. Through exercising calculated restraint and implementing insight at the appropriate times, you were able to influence outcomes in ways that left others struggling to adapt. Each decision you made, each boundary you maintained, and each pause you embraced carried weight because it generated consequences without anyone recognizing that a conflict had even taken place. Leading strategists trained to assess and anticipate conflict were compelled to acknowledge that at times the most decisive victories result from patience, precision, and timing rather than the application of brute force. Your presence altered the unfolding of situations. Where others anticipated friction, resistance, or overt challenges, your measured actions diffused tension and redirected energy toward productive outcomes. You didn't need to argue, intervene forcefully, or assert dominance in order to achieve results. Instead, your capacity to act strategically, to maintain your position without escalation, and to make choices rooted in clarity compelled outcomes to align in your favor. The realization that influence doesn't require amplification or aggression was a lesson they couldn't disregard. By demonstrating that restraint can be as potent as action, you redefined the rules of engagement. They recognized that outcomes are shaped not solely by the intensity of effort, but by the precision of intent. Your understanding of when to advance, when to pause, and when to allow events to unfold organically created opportunities and advantages that others would have attempted to force through direct confrontation. This subtle mastery of timing and influence exposed the limitations of conventional approaches and compelled them to reevaluate their understanding of control, power, and strategy. The impact of this lesson is profound because it alters the perception of what constitutes victory. They now understand that confrontation isn't invariably necessary, and that the subtle, deliberate choices of someone who possesses a broader perspective can exert a more significant effect than any aggressive maneuver. Your capacity to achieve results without engaging in direct conflict has left a lasting impression on those observing you. They are now aware that true influence can be exerted subtly, strategically, and decisively. And for that realization, they have reason to respect and express their appreciation. Number 10, you became the unknown variable they couldn't quantify. You became the unknown variable they couldn't quantify. So there you have it. What we've uncovered isn't just about strategies and influence. It's about recognizing the incredible power each of you possesses simply by living authentically, by sticking to your principles, and by trusting your intuition. You may not always see the impact you're having, but believe me, it's there. You're shaping the world in ways you can't even imagine. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Have you ever felt like your actions had unseen consequences, or maybe you've noticed others reacting to you in unexpected ways? Share your experiences in the comments below. Let's start a conversation and learn from each other. And if this resonated with you, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future insights and explorations. We're just getting started. Thanks for being here, and remember, you're more influential than you think. You think.